There's no better place to look for new creatures than Alaska.
Alaska hides more unproven creatures than anywhere in America, and one lake has hidden the biggest for 80 years. In 2020, a marine biologist lowered an $8,000 camera into that lake to settle it. Something struck the rig, tore the metal apart, and left. The camera had died minutes before. That is the curse of the Iliamna lake monster, the creature locals nicknamed Illy. Every time the evidence gets close, something goes wrong. A hook straightens, a cable snaps, a camera dies in the one moment that mattered. But the biologist walked away, certain something enormous was down there. And what the witnesses describe is not the sea serpent everyone pictures. It is real, and worse. This is why Alaska's lake monster is more terrifying than Jaws. The lake. To understand the monster, you first have to understand the water it supposedly lives in, because this is not an ordinary lake. Iliamna sits on the Alaska Peninsula, in one of the emptiest corners of the largest state in America. It is the biggest freshwater lake in Alaska, stretching somewhere between 77 and 95 miles long, with depths plunging close to 1,000 feet. Locals call it an inland sea, and the name fits. It is so vast and so deep that entire regions of it have never been properly surveyed. If you want to hide something large, this is the place. There are almost no roads. Access is mainly by small plane. The population is sparse, scattered in tiny villages along a shoreline that runs for hundreds of miles. Boat traffic is thin. And that isolation is exactly why sightings of whatever lives in Iliamna went almost entirely unrecorded until the 1940s. A creature could surface 100 times a year in a place like this. And unless someone happened to be flying overhead or fishing that exact stretch of water, no one would ever know. But the lake hides one more secret, and it is the detail that makes the monster theory harder to dismiss. The ocean door. Iliamna is not sealed off from the sea. It has a corridor. The Kivachak River runs out of the lake and down to Bristol Bay, which opens into the Bering Sea. That river is the lake's only connection to the ocean, and it changes everything about what could be living there. Because things can come up that river, and at least one ocean animal already has, permanently. Iliamna is home to one of the only freshwater seal colonies on Earth. Around 400 seals live in the lake year-round, cut off from the sea, a direct result of that ocean link. If seals can find their way up the Kvichak and stay, so can other things. Sharks, sturgeon. Predators built for saltwater that could, in theory, adapt to fresh. The ocean door is open, just barely, and it is wide enough to matter. And the people who lived on this lake long before any biologist arrived already knew something was using it. The Iliamna monster did not begin as a tourist legend. It began as a survival warning, passed down through the indigenous peoples of the region for generations before any Western contact. The Denoina, the Yupik, and the Alutiiq all carried oral histories about something dangerous in the water. And these were not campfire stories. They were practical warnings tied to specific unsafe zones, specific seasons, specific behavior on the lake. The Tlingit told of the Gona Cadet, a creature with the head of a wolf and the body of an orca, a kind of fish god. The Aleut and Yupik spoke of the Jikik Nak, a thing that rammed canoes. To this day, some locals refuse to wear red or take red boats onto the water, a taboo old enough that its origin has blurred, but its rule survives. One legend runs deeper than the rest. A man kills a lake monster and wears its skin, using it to catch fish and secretly feed his starving village. He is betrayed by false accusations from his mother-in-law. He dies still wearing the skin, and his body is found inside the monster's mouth. He becomes the Gona Cadet, and his children become lucky spirits tied to the lake. It is a myth. But myths in places like this often encode something real, a memory of a genuine danger dressed in story. And in 1942, the story stopped being just a story. The first sightings. In 1942, two pilots named Aylesworth and Hammersley were flying over Iliamna when they looked down and saw something in the water. Large fish, aluminum-colored, far bigger than anything that should be in a lake. They were the first people to put the sighting into the modern record. They were not the last. In 1959, the adventurer and cryptid hunter Tom Slick funded an aerial search of the lake. The search itself found nothing, but in a separate fishing attempt tied to the effort, gear was destroyed by something in the water. In 1963, a biologist reported seeing a fish between 25 and 30 feet long, and it never once surfaced for air, which quietly ruled out a whale or anything that needed to breathe. Then, in 1967, a friend of a missionary named Chuck Crapuchettes hooked something from a float plane. Whatever it was dragged the plane through the water. When it was over, the cables had snapped and the hook itself had been straightened out. If these were isolated stories, they would be easy to wave off. But they kept coming, decade after decade, and the descriptions kept lining up in ways that are hard to explain away. 50 years of witnesses. The sightings did not stop in the 60s. They built into one of the most consistent records of any lake cryptid on Earth. In 1977, a pilot named Tim Laporte watched a fish between 12 and 14 feet long breach the surface and dive. In the late 1980s, residents reported a large black fish with a visible fin. In 2003, 7 separate witnesses in the village of Kokonok watched an 8-foot fin cross the lake for a full 15 minutes. In 2008, an anthropologist named Robin Levine saw a 15-foot grayish fish twisting near the bottom. And in 2017, villagers in Kokonok saw 3 whale-sized animals blowing water, but with no dorsal fins, which does not match any whale. And then there is the account that unsettles people most. A group of moose hunters sat in an 18-foot skiff on a calm September day, watching a family of swans float nearby. Beneath the boat, they noticed what looked like 2 big sunken logs and thought nothing of it. Then one swan vanished underwater. Within seconds, the entire flock was dragged under. The sunken logs were not logs. One of them was as long and as wide as their skiff, with eyes the size of soccer balls. The hunters said the creatures looked like giant northern pike.
He said it's longer than the boat. And the boat was almost like 32-footer.
That description, giant pike, is going to matter because it is the theory that has grown the most terrifying over time. But first, the incident that turned a lifelong skeptic into a believer. The long line. Mark Steigar was not a man who believed in monsters. He was a retired colonel, a former chief aviation officer for the Alaska Army National Guard, with a master's degree in wildlife biology. He owned a cabin on Iliamna and had heard the stories for years. He took them with a grain of salt. In 2017, that changed. Steigar had set a commercial halibut long line in about 100 feet of water. This was serious gear, rated to hold halibut over 300 pounds and sleeper sharks more than 10 feet long. When he came back to check it, his 38-pound anchor had been dragged 50 yards. The line was tangled and running the wrong direction. The metal snaps were bent in different directions and piled on top of each other. Part of the line looked as though it had been sawed through, as if by teeth. Whatever moved that gear was far larger and far stronger than any seal, and Steigar's reaction tells you how convinced he was. He did not reset the line to try again. He coiled it up and packed it away. This could be the oldest creature on the planet, he said. I'm not going to try to catch it anymore. He had gone looking for a story to debunk and found something he decided to respect instead. But respect was not the same as proof, and another scientist wanted proof. The investigation Bruce Wright is a marine ecologist and an apex predator specialist, a man who has studied bears and sharks for a career, and who describes himself as no fan of cryptobiology. But the Iliamna accounts were too consistent for him to ignore. Wright teamed up with Stigar, and in 2019, they deployed the first deep-water video camera ever used to hunt the animal, part of an $8,000 system Wright had purchased. The plan was straightforward. Bait the camera, drop it deep, and finally get footage of whatever kept destroying the gear. Scientists at the U.S. Geological Survey offered to help identify anything the camera caught. Wright also planned to collect water samples and test them for environmental DNA, genetic traces the creature would shed into the water, which could name the species even without a photograph. Then came 2020. 3 sightings were reported that year. And something big came to the camera. It was baited with the filleted carcass of a sockeye salmon, and something tore part of the metal rig apart. But the camera had run out of battery shortly before the strike. 80 years of near misses, and the pattern held one more time. The evidence came right up to the lens, and the lens went dark. So Wright was left doing what everyone before him had done, reasoning from the damage, the behavior, and the descriptions toward the most likely suspect. And he had 2. Wright's first and longest-held theory is genuinely chilling. He believes the monster may be a Pacific sleeper shark. Sleeper sharks are deep-water predators that can grow to 20 feet long. Their close relatives, Greenland sharks, are the longest-living vertebrates on the planet, capable of surviving more than 300 years. They are slow, cold-adapted ambush hunters that can go long stretches without feeding, which fits a large, sometimes frozen lake perfectly. Wright's idea is that sleeper sharks either swim up the Kvichak corridor from the ocean to hunt, or that a population became trapped in the lake as glaciers receded thousands of years ago and slowly adapted to fresh water. The behavior lines up unsettlingly well. Sleeper sharks are ambush predators that lie still and strike, which matches the sunken log accounts. Their size matches the estimates. Their cold tolerance matches the environment. The one thing that has never been proven is that a shark can truly survive full-time in fresh water in a place like this. That gap is why Wright started considering a second suspect, and in some ways it is the more frightening one: the giant pike. The northern pike is already one of the most aggressive freshwater predators alive. It is a long, dark, torpedo-shaped ambush hunter with a mouth full of backward-curving teeth, and it does exactly what the Iliamna witnesses describe. It lies motionless like a log, then explodes forward to seize its prey. The moose hunters said the swan-eaters looked like giant pike. Wright started to wonder if they were right. Because pike in Alaska are not a hypothetical threat. They are an exploding one. Northern pike are invasive south of the Alaska Range, and they now infest more than 150 waterways across south-central Alaska. They have been confirmed devouring juvenile salmon and trout, and warming rivers are accelerating their spread. They are proven to travel long distances and cause serious ecological damage in documented Alaskan waters. That real-world evidence strengthens the giant pike theory in a way no legend could. Alaskan pike are aggressive, adaptable, and expanding. If a small population in an isolated salmon-rich lake like Iliamna grew to unusual size over decades, feeding on 5 to 8 million sockeye a year with no competition and no pressure, you would have exactly what the witnesses keep describing. Not a serpent, Most famous lake monsters, Loch Ness, Champ, Ogopogo, are described as long-necked serpents, plesiosaur throwbacks from a vanished age. Iliamna's monster is different, and that difference is the whole point. Nobody at Iliamna describes a long neck. They describe a fish. A massive, powerful, dark or metallic fish with visible fins and a large head, moving in fast, forceful bursts straight toward boats. The estimates cluster between 10 and 30 feet, with a few outliers claiming 60 or 70. Every credible theory on the table, sleeper shark, giant pike, sturgeon, is a real animal, not a mythical one. That is what makes Iliamna scarier than the serpents. The other lake monsters ask you to believe in a creature from the deep past. Iliamna asks you to believe that something real, something with a name in a biology textbook, got much bigger than it was ever supposed to, in a lake too deep and too remote for anyone to check. Why it stays hidden. After more than 80 years of modern reports, there is still no carcass, no clear photograph, no confirmed DNA sample. In 1980, the Anchorage Daily News offered a $100,000 reward for proof of the creature's existence. It went unclaimed. It is still unclaimed. The reason is the lake itself. Iliamna is enormous, close to 1,000 feet deep, and battered by harsh subarctic weather. A systematic search would be staggeringly expensive and genuinely dangerous. The animals, whatever they are, live in cold, murky, complex depths built for hiding, and the human population is too thin and too scattered to catch more than the occasional glimpse. The evidence that exists stays circumstantial: a dragged anchor, sawed cables, a straightened hook, a torn camera housing. Compelling, but never conclusive. Wright and Steigar have not given up. Their camera work continues, and they have added drone surveillance and DNA sampling to the effort. One day, one of those water samples may finally name the thing. But until then, Iliamna keeps its answer where it has always kept it. At the bottom, in the dark, out of reach. So has Alaska's lake monster been proven? Not in the way the word usually means. There is no body and no footage. But there is something down there. The anchor, the cables, the hook, the camera, and 80 years of witnesses who keep describing the same impossible fish. All point at a predator that is almost certainly real, even if it has never been named. And that is what makes it worse than a movie monster. Jaws was a shark someone could catch. The thing in Iliamna has beaten every hook, every line, and every camera sent after it for 8 decades. It is still out there, still feeding, still hidden, and the lake is not telling. If this story stayed with you, like the video and subscribe for more.